A Senate committee winds up 2 weeks of hearings on the mafia tomorrow with FBI testimony on its recent successes in sending top mob bosses to prison for lengthy sentences. At tomorrow's hearing, however, one subject will be a powerful figure in organized crime who has eluded authorities for years. James Polk tonight on this unusual godfather.
It is dusk in New York City, and the man coming out of the shadows on the left is walking down the street in bedroom slippers, wearing his pajamas beneath a bathrobe. This man is Vincent Gigante, and the FBI says he is the boss of the richest mafia family in the country, his brother.
They ain't gonna answer you. You don't understand.
His doctors say the man in pajamas is mentally ill, not a godfather, but a man with the mind of a child, afraid of the dark.
He's crazy as a fox. He has played this game for many years.
For the last 22 years, Gigante has been able to stay out of prison, rising in the ranks of the mob. From this seedy social club on the street where he lives, the FBI says Gigante runs an empire of kickbacks and labor racketeering, drugs and pornography, gambling and loan sharking.
We're talking billions of dollars, but I couldn't give you a set figure. Yes.
The FBI considers Gigante the equal of the more flamboyant John Gotti, boss of New York's largest mob family.
I think right now they are the two most powerful mafia figures in the country, without a doubt.
One man in bathrobe and pajamas, the other in $2,000 suits.
The styles don't match.
What does that mean?
That means somebody's going to kill somebody. That means somebody's going to overpower the other.
The FBI paid a courtesy call on Gotti last fall to warn him there was a mob contract put on his life. They didn't tell him who wanted him killed, but the FBI has the name, and our sources say it's Gigante.
My opinion, Gigante will survive. Gotti will not.
Gigante first came to police attention 30 years ago for taking a shot at a mob boss.
Vinny, did you give yourself up because you were afraid?
No, you're crazy.
He grew up as the neighbor and protege of Vito Genovese, the man who gave his name to the family Gigante now runs. When Genovese went to prison in 1960 for dealing in heroin, Gigante was convicted with him. He has never been back to prison. The last time Gigante was arrested in a bribery case in the early 70s, the charges were dropped when his lawyers produced letters from psychiatrists calling him a schizophrenic with little chance of recovery. Gigante has even been hospitalized here from time to time. His younger brother, a Catholic priest on the right, walking down the street with Gigante in these photos, says Gigante is a sick man, too sick to talk with us. The priest calls the FBI's version stupid. Police insist Gigante is a mastermind.
A smart man would be smart enough to act a little crazy.
Just before midnight most nights, Gigante's bodyguards take him to this $1 million townhouse he shares with his longtime girlfriend just off Park Avenue on the Upper East Side. Unaware that we're watching with hidden cameras as he leaves, Gigante is no longer walking around in pajamas, but is dressed like a normal person at this time of night.
He's been extremely smart. He's outwitted us for a long period of time. But I can tell you right now that the commitment's going to be made where it's going to become extremely difficult for him to outwit us from here on out.
You think 2, 3, 4 years down the road, Vincent Gigante will be in jail?
Yes, that is our aim, and we will succeed, without a doubt.
James Polk, NBC News, New York.
All but certain that a federal judge will rule tomorrow that Gigante is sane, was sane, and is competent to stand trial. The boss of all bosses in the American Mafia will have to answer to murder and racketeering charges. News Channel 4's John Miller reports.
While the judge's opinion is still sealed, FBI agents are making contingency plans to rearrest Gigante on charges he's been able to sidestep by using his mental illness, an illness that prosecutors have claimed is an act.
It's worked for him for 20 years. Hopefully it's not going to work for him much longer.
Charles Rose, a former prosecutor, developed the original indictment of Gigante, charging him with being the boss of the Genovese crime family, the chairman of the mob's commission, and the man who arranged to have mobsters who broke the rules of La Cosa Nostra killed. One alleged plot involved plans to bump off John Gotti. Gigante has been able to avoid going to trial because a host of psychiatrists have testified that the wan figure who stares blankly and wanders the streets in a blue bathrobe was mentally disabled. But a host of mob informers, including Sammy the Bull Gravano, have said that they had regular dealings with the Chin as a mob boss. How you doing? Excuse me, sir.
He was meeting late at night in garages and in social clubs and in limos and on the street and giving orders to run the family, to commit murders on behalf of the family. Someday soon, Mr. Gigante will be in a court of law and he'll have to answer the charges against him.
If Judge Nickerson decides tomorrow, as our sources believe he will, his decision won't come as a big surprise. Already he has ruled as a finding of fact by the court that Gigante was sane and was the boss of the Genovese crime family when the crimes were committed. Tomorrow it's expected he'll rule that he's sane enough to stand trial. John Miller, News Channel 4.
Gigante's living in his mother's apartment in Greenwich Village. By court order, he's confined to a 4-block area there, except for trips to the doctor.
7 years to get Vincent Gigante to stand trial for murder, but now it has finally become reality. 5 years after Gambino boss John Gotti was sentenced to life behind bars in a federal penitentiary, prosecutors are planning to do the same to the man they call the last of the old-time mobsters, Vincent the Chin Gigante.
Despite the fact that he is, quote-unquote, been incompetent to help his defense the last lengthy period of time, still is the last great remaining mob boss in New York City. And he has wielded that power and continues to wield that kind of power.
The 21-count murder, conspiracy to murder, and racketeering indictment charges Gigante with ordering the hits of 6 Philadelphia gangsters more than a decade ago. For years, Gigante's attorneys have claimed that the Chin is incompetent to stand trial because they say the 69-year-old suffers from a heart condition as well as dementia and schizophrenia. Last year, Judge Eugene Nickerson ruled that the Chin was a forceful and active leader of the Genovese crime family through the years 1980 to 1991. Nickerson then backed out of the trial when attorneys said their client suffers from Alzheimer's. Nickerson said he could not be impartial because his wife suffers from the disease.
Clearly, the government has persuasive evidence that during the period of time where he's claimed to have been incompetent, that in fact he's been conducting mob business. So maybe he's incompetent to stand trial, but at the same time can run the family. I think it's an act.
Opening arguments are set to take place Wednesday with Judge Jack Weinstein presiding. Weinstein has ordered that attorneys on both sides not discuss the case with the media. What we do know is that the prosecution's star witness, mob turncoat Salvatore Sammy Bull Gravano, is expected to testify against Gigante. It was Gravano's testimony that helped put away the Teflon Don in 1992. Gigante is free on $1 million bail and wears an electronic bracelet at all times. He's due back in...
Is this apparently pathetic 69-year-old man crazy or crazy like a fox? And if it is the latter, and this is an elaborate act, did Vincent the Chin Gigante murder 7 men, plot to murder 2 others, including Gambino crime boss John Gotti, and since the early 80s, run his own mafia organization, the Genovese crime family? The one-time pug, who legend says once fired a point-blank shot at the head of bosses Frankie Costello and missed, and lived to tell about it, was hustled into Brooklyn federal court for the beginning of his trial. It took 15 years of pursuit for investigators to get him in any kind of a chair in any courtroom like this one, a pursuit his priest brother, Father Louis Gigante, called ridiculous.
We never dreamed that our government would ever go to the extent for 15 years tracking him down as if he was a hunted animal.
Well, he was hunted, and today's first witnesses were cops and FBI agents who said the man they watched walked and talked and wore casual clothes like a normal person, and not like the confused guy wandering around in pajamas and a bathrobe. As to the question, who's going to win the case, a former federal prosecutor told me this morning there was a good chance the government will lose. There are no smoking gun audio tapes. The key witnesses against Gigante are themselves career criminals and murderers, and persuasive evidence will be introduced questioning Gigante's competence. On the other hand, the source said the government has been winning these cases, and Gigante is the last big mafia name out there. So for 5 weeks or thereabouts, we'll see Gigante in his wheelchair, perhaps wearing a simple blue open-neck shirt, as he did today. And witnesses like mob underbosses Sammy Bull Gravano and Phil Leonetti will call him a killer. And whether Gigante sleeps or collapses or babbles in confusion, a jury will judge him Finally. In Brooklyn, Mike Taibbi.
After 7 years of legal battles over his sanity, Vincent Gigante, seemingly too feeble to even walk to his car unassisted, has finally been brought to trial. In Brooklyn federal court, Gigante appeared dazed as prosecutor George Stamboulides described the defendant as a cold-blooded murderer, a powerful mafia boss who went to great lengths to preserve his power.
He's an enormous catch, and if he is convicted, then I think prosecutors can claim victory in finally deposing the entire hierarchy of the mob as we really think of the mob.
Gigante launched his mob career 40 years ago after a bungled alleged hit on crime boss Frank Costello. Federal agents say he came up with the Crazy Act years later to avoid prosecution, wandering his neighborhood in pajamas and bathrobe, muttering to himself.
I've been saying this for 10 years, and I'm just going to say it again. Yes, he is crazy. He's crazy like a fox.
The government says while Gigante played the fool, he ran an underground operation of lucrative criminal enterprises, everything from bid rigging to bribing labor unions. Former mobsters, including Sammy the Bull Gravano, who helped convict John Gotti, will testify about how Gigante controlled his empire.
When you speak to the informants, they describe meetings where he is entirely lucid. He is making critical decisions for a very substantial organization. He's running a business, and you cannot run a business when you're crazy, and he does not act crazy when he is in the privacy of his clubhouse.
Defense attorneys once suggested their client may testify to demonstrate his poor mental condition. It would be Gigante's most important performance. His only hope is that the jury believes it. Troy Roberts, CBS News, New York.
Here in New York, they call it the Oddfather trial. The accused is the purported head of the Genovese crime family who has a penchant for walking the streets in his bathrobe. The government has charged him with murder and racketeering in the biggest mob trial since John Gotti was convicted 5 years ago. Correspondent Troy Roberts has our report.
Prosecutors this week began opening up the secret criminal world where Vincent Gigante reputedly operates as a powerful mob boss. While feigning mental illness, federal agents say he ordered 6 gangland slayings in Philadelphia. But the government has been frustrated in tying Gigante directly to the murders.
This case will rise or fall on the quality and credibility of the informant testimony.
The government informers include a lineup of cold-blooded killers. 400-pound mobster Peter Big Pete Chiodo, mob underboss Philip Crazy Phil Leonetti, Alphonse Little Al DeArco, and Sammy the Bull Gravano, whose testimony helped convict John Gotti.
Liars. I've never seen these people. And to tell you the truth, I don't read the stories about them. They're making stories up as they go along.
Leonetti, a protected government witness, told jurors that Gigante ordered the 6 murders in retaliation for the unsanctioned killings of 2 Philadelphia crime bosses. But he later admitted his information was secondhand and that he never met Gigante. Chiodo also could only testify about what he heard from other gangsters about Gigante's role in killings and racketeering. Sammy the Bull Gravano is the only prosecution witness who says he attended mob meetings with Gigante and can testify to his mental state. But Gravano reportedly may refuse to talk because of an impending court case over profits he may have earned from a best-selling book on his life. It's hard to tell how all of this is affecting the defendant. When he's not appearing dazed during important court testimony, he's sleeping. Troy Roberts, CBS News, New York.
A star government witness against the mafia was back in a New York courtroom yesterday. As Troy Roberts reports, Sammy the Bull Gravano was called to support the charge that defendant Vincent Gigante is head of the Genovese crime family.
Salvatore Gravano's appearance in Brooklyn federal court got a rare visible reaction from Vincent Gigante. His eyes fixed on the witness in a long, steady stare as Gravano identified him as the head of the Genovese crime family.
If the jury believes Gravano's testimony and that Gigante walking around in the bathrobe is just an act, then I think they'll convict.
Gravano detailed his life of crime for the jurors, the 19 murders and his days as John Gotti's right hand. He testified Gigante wore the familiar pajamas and a bathrobe at their first mob meeting, but there was nothing unusual about his behavior.
They want to say that Mr. Gigante is acting. Well, I think Sammy takes the cake today.
The case prosecutors have presented so far has been largely based on hearsay. Gravano is the only witness to give first-hand testimony about Gigante's mental state and participation in high-level mob meetings. Still, it's unclear if he can provide the bombshell the government is hoping for.
If the jury was expecting to hear the type of tapes that the jury in the Gotti case heard, where he's on there saying, me, John Gotti, will cut your head off and let's kill this guy and this is why I whacked the guy, they're going to be disappointed.
In his recent memoirs, Gravano writes damaging passages about Gigante, saying it was clear as a bell that he was the boss, so why was he doing his nut act? Maybe he enjoyed driving the feds nuts. Gravano's book will be subjected to a detailed examination as the defense tries to hold it up as a work of fiction. Troy Roberts, CBS News, New York.
Did Yolanda leave yet?
They're all gone. They're all back. Yolanda wants to thank you all, by the way, for your graciousness. All right, James. Guys, we'll see them. I'll show them to you. It's all right. Excuse me. You can see them now. They're exhibits. Bring them out? Yeah, bring them out. Please bring them out. See one of them? Go ahead.
Whoa.
You got to be cool.
Hey. Can you step back a little bit? We're not going anywhere. Excuse me. Step back just a little.
My personal favorite, Leonetti.
I'll get down if you let me get in.
Really? He has so many, he has two. Very nice.
Tim?
Tim? No, sorry. Which one?
One more time. And then I want to run and get
One more time. 1-7 gold. This way.
Would you turn this one, sir, please?
here, babe.
Speed readers on TV?
Yeah.
Got it?
No, this can't be that easy.
Come on.
Sure.
I'm from Channel 4.
How are you?
Good, I'm seeing you in the...
Nice to meet you. Phil Foley.
Too. Let me just look for Tony. Did you speak earlier?
Yeah, briefly.
Briefly in front of the...
Did I? Personally, no.
Oh, okay. Tony? Basically, could you just give me a reaction to what you thought of today's trial?
Well, Mr. Gigante's loved ones are very disappointed in the result. We're concerned that the RICO statute has now been taken to its logical absurdity, where hearsay is corroborated by other hearsay. We don't think, as a fundamental matter of justice, that should be allowed.
So what's the next step for you?
The next step is an appeal. And we also have the issue of Mr. Gigante's competency to be sentenced. We believe he's not competent to be sentenced. All of the doctors have found him to be incompetent, and we will believe that to be the case for his sentencing as well.
Okay, do you know any idea how long that will take?
Well, probably within the next 30 days, I would think.
Okay. As far as, I missed it, what the doctor said. What did the doctor say about his condition?
He's got dementia. It's documented mental disorder. He has clear vascular problems that stop the flow of blood to his brain, creating this dementia like any other elderly person that unfortunately we've all had in our families. That's what he has. He's 69 years old. He's a former professional boxer, which increases the likelihood of his dementia. And we've shown through PET scans and SPECT scans that he has dementia.
Did he talk to you after?
New York, the reputed head of the Genovese crime family, now faces 30 years in prison following his conviction today for racketeering and conspiracy to commit murder. Vincent Chen Gigante had evaded prosecution for years by claiming mental illness as he wandered the streets of New York in a bathrobe.
The extended biological family of Vincent Gigante brushed past reporters.
Excuse me.
Yolanda, what's your hope now?
Barbara, I'll talk to you soon. Just not right now.
In the Brooklyn Federal Courthouse minutes earlier, 69-year-old Vincent Gigante in a dark jacket and shirt, white stubble on his cheek, seemed confused. Judge Jack Weinstein sentenced him to 12 years in prison and fined him more than $1 million for labor extortion and conspiring to kill John Gotti and another mobster. Prosecutors considered the sentence a victory.
We believe that the sentence today is commensurate with his criminality and his running the largest criminal organization in the city, if not the nation.
But the boss today looked like a shadow of the young boxer, the cunning mobster, who is said to have worked his way up the ladder of the Genovese crime family.
He's not a mob boss.
In previous interviews with the I-Team, his grown children insisted that the government was wrong. Since the late 60s, they said, their father was mentally ill. Wandering around in a bathrobe wasn't an act, just a reflection of illness.
He did go out in his bathrobe, but not because we were trying to parade a picture in front of anyone. It's the way he dressed.
It's not a surprise that they would say that, given the lengths that they've gone to and his crazy act and how long it's been perpetuated.
Gigante did not speak in court today.
He doesn't understand why he can't be with his family, why he can't go home.
Maybe Gigante was faking in the past, psychiatrists say, but now he has dementia. Using scans of his brain, the blue indicates abnormalities. His family tried to persuade the judge that Gigante was too sick to stand trial or to be sentenced to prison. A severe heart condition, his doctor said today, puts Gigante at risk.
I don't think he'll survive in prison. I don't think, hopefully he'll get a medical parole.
Gigante is now in Westchester County Medical Center. He'll eventually be transferred to a prison hospital. But the judge left some hope for the family. A medical parole is possible if Gigante becomes too sick in prison. Barbara Nevins-Taylor, UPN 9 I-Team.
Sure, yeah, that's exactly what we would like. We would like them, you know, and they appear to be. And like I said, we're just waiting. It's taking a toll day after day, you know.
Have you talked to your dad? Is it taking a toll on him?
His condition fluctuates as far as not in response to any of this because he's not aware. He's not aware. He's just, you know, the same. But his physical condition is taking a toll because he's being made to stay here. And normally he's at home, he sleeps half the day. He's on Thorazine, and I know you're new here now, so you haven't gotten the list of medication, but I'm sure anyone else would provide you with that list. He's on an extreme amount of medication for all of his illnesses, of which there are many. Okay? Thanks very much.
You got you for just 2 seconds, or you want to go back in?
Let me go back in. Let me go back in. I promise you. No, ya entré ahí. Ya tengo que mandar fucking pasaporte. Tengo que ir a la Lincoln Center. Sí, a cambiarlo. Alguien me mandó aquí. Voy a dar al correo para conseguir una aplicación. Y le voy a mandar por el correo.
How are you this morning? You all right? Good.
You like the left side or the right side? You like the profile? Whatever.
You always talk to me?
Of course.
Can you wait till we get a... You are? Okay, let's... Here comes... We're a lot of
I look so good.
No, for TV. It's okay. Yeah. Why do you...
I don't know. He gets you every time.
I don't know why.
Okay. Father, let's start with you. It's about over now. Father, it's about over now, and it's in the hands of the jury. What's going through your mind?
We're a little tense. It's a moment that we're not certain of anything. A jury's 12 people, so we don't know. But what's going in our mind that truly we should never have been here. And that's what's angering most of us, because we know how sick he is, how many times he's spent in a hospital, and if they really thought he was a criminal, where were they? Why didn't they go to the hospital? Why didn't they do something there? Why didn't they bug his room up there? Why didn't they do something to think that they could find this man who's a sick? Remember, he's never been heard in a criminal act on any tape in 20 years. I mean, that's what's bothering us. That the fact that they prosecuted a very, very ill man, and he's our life. He's so much part of us.
Yolanda, you? Any words?
Yeah, I'm offended at the fact that they insinuated that he entered a hospital to avoid a subpoena, to avoid being arrested. You can walk into a hospital and arrest anybody. They put marshals in front of my father, with my father, continually throughout the last few months while he was hospitalized for his heart condition.
Let me just
they
say,
could have done.
Let me just say on that instance, that one instance I remembered very clearly. My older brother died of a massive heart attack in 1983. My brother Vincent has had heart troubles all his life. And I remember when he went to the hospital, it was a Saturday night. He could have died that night, for all I know. But they took it as a ruse. And that's their whole game. They've got the public relations to keep pushing it out, and they've done it all these years. We've stayed back because we're a simple family who simply wants to live, and we don't do anything extraordinary. So he was very sick. We thought he had a serious heart attack. He did have a heart attack, but he came out after 5 days, thank God.
How are you feeling about his chances for acquittal?
Well, I think the chances of acquittal are very good as long as we have common sense people who slowly go through the entire case and see where this case really is about someone who they know nothing about, that they only know it from second, third, fourth hearsay explanations. When you talk about that, I'm afraid of the RICO Act. I'm afraid that it could be extended, that people talk about me and I could be convicted of a crime. And that's what we're seeing today.
Say nothing happens by 5 o'clock today, jurors don't come back. What will that indicate to you?
I don't know. I heard the charge took almost 2 hours to read. If they're going to be responsible people, and we expect them to be, I wouldn't expect them back before then. I really wouldn't, but I don't think it's indicative of anything except that they're trying to be responsible.
The judge told them to stay if they want to stay longer. If they feel they're near a decision, I think they will stay longer. But it doesn't mean anything. There are some charges, and they're going to go over each one of them. It doesn't mean anything.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Which one is it? You got down in front. Down.
This way, please. Okay. Step up to the mic. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Everybody will get it.
Down in front.
Okay.
Down in front.
You can step up to the microphones when you speak. We'd appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. Okay. Tell me when everyone's set up.
Ready?
Sure.
We ready?
Okay, ready to go? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Zachary Carter. I'm the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York. This is a great day for criminal justice. The conviction of Vincent Gigante demonstrates our willingness to match the determination of the head of an important organized crime family to elude detection. It's been a long road since 1990 when Vincent Gigante was indicted, and from that time through the present time, he has embarked on a determined crusade to elude prosecution by putting on a charade of mental incompetence. It is because the attorneys of this office and the Federal Bureau and the agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation were willing to match his efforts with Herculean efforts of their own, that his charade was finally brought to an end. There was a protracted proceeding. I believe it lasted longer than the trial itself before Judge Nickerson, in which it was demonstrated by our trial team that Vincent Gigante was more than competent to stand trial, that he was in fact the person who was in operating control of the Genovese crime family and an active and important participant in the commission that coordinates the criminal activities of organized crime nationwide. It was after a protracted hearing that Judge Nickerson determined that he was competent to stand trial, that the activities that we demonstrated that he had engaged in, the criminal activities, were inconsistent with that of a person who was in fact a mental defective, and the trial was permitted to proceed. And during the course of that trial, this trial team of Andrew Weissman, George Stambolitis, and Dan Dorsky, with the support of the Chief of the Criminal Division, Valerie Caproni, and the Chief of the Organized Crime Section, Mark Feldman, and with the extraordinary support of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, in this case headed up by Dick Rudolph, who was a case agent, demonstrated to this jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Vincent Gigante was in fact very much in charge of the operation of the Genovese crime family, and that he was responsible for committing acts of racketeering, including labor racketeering and conspiracy to murder other members of organized crime. Yes.
Are you disappointed you didn't get a conviction on the 7 murder charges?
We got convictions on all counts of the indictment. There were acts, racketeering acts that were murders that were not found by the jury to have been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, but we didn't need to prove those in order to sustain the racketeering charges. I think that the fact that the jury found the defendants guilty on all charges, but did not find every single act proven beyond a reasonable doubt, finding some not proven and not being able to reach a conclusion on others, just demonstrated the fact that they were careful and conscientious.
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
what kind of blow did this strike to organized crime? You know, Gigante was in power for a very long time, and I guess it took 7 years for the prosecution to be successful and complete. You know, what does this do as far as organized crime is concerned with now?
Well, I think that when you look at the lengths that Vincent Gigante went to conceal his leadership of the Genovese crime family and his active participation on the commission of organized crime families, that demonstrates in and of itself his importance as a leader in organized crime. So I think that it's fair to conclude that as a result of his conviction, that leadership will be destabilized.
Whoa, down.
Okay.
No comment.
What's your reaction? He's not in good health. He has to surrender. He has to
Well, he's going to go down to a hospital facility. He's going to have the physicians there take care of him. I will probably go down myself, as well as other private psychiatrists to aid in his evaluation and treatment.
Is he going to be able to withstand this attention and this kind of treatment? Not at home?
Yeah.
Let's go to the mic, sir.
That's okay. Yes.
Well, you know, he's a very sick man, and he has a very bad heart condition, and really no one can predict he's a candidate for sudden death on the basis of certain cardiac arrhythmias at any time. Whether he realizes where he is, that's another matter.
Sir, could you come
What about?
Could you come to the mic, please? You can step over to the mic here.
Just come forward.
Let's step right on over.
Okay.
Excuse us.
Everybody else is under here.
Right here.
It's not fair because there are a lot of.
Dr. Wexler, can you tell us his reaction? Has there been any change in the way he acted?
Normal after the verdict, and he was brought back into room 603. Blood pressure normal, didn't require any nitroglycerin. He really, as far as I can tell, is unaware of what's going on.
He was staring very intently at the jury when the decision came.
I couldn't even see it. I was sitting behind him.
Doctor, what will stay in federal prison do for Mr. Gigante, in your opinion?
Well, he's going to be away from his family. And his family has cared for him in a rather special manner over the years. He will be there, I gather, for about 30 days for evaluation and treatment.
Do you think he can get the care he needs in prison? Like
Well, I think it's more of a hospital there. Obviously, you can't get the care there that you can get with your own private physicians in a private hospital.
Will you be going with him to North Carolina?
Yes, I'll be going with him to North Carolina.
Well, what kind of effect will that have on his health? If he's in a federal facility, he doesn't have his family, right?
It can't be good. It can only be bad. And if his blood pressure goes up because of his paranoia, stress, anxieties, it could prove fatal.
Are you saying that he had no idea what was going on in court?
As far as I could tell, no.
Doctor, what sort of...
I'm not a psychiatrist, though.
What sort of cancer are we talking about?
No, he had certain tests done on his thyroid gland which showed cold nodules, which is potentially cancerous. And it has to be biopsied. And he had a needle biopsy done, which was not diagnostic, so he needs an open biopsy. He also had severe bleeding from his urinary bladder, and atypical cells were found in his urine by his urologist, so he has to be cystoscoped to make sure that there isn't a malignancy in the genitourinary system, the bladder, the kidneys, whatever. That's what has to be evaluated as far as any cancer is concerned.
Well, you're a cardiologist.
Yes.
And you're Dr. Bernard Wexler.
That's correct. ECHSLER.
How is that?
He's never flown, to my knowledge, before. I'm flying with him. Oh, flee from, no. He hasn't gone any place. He's stayed in the same place basically for 7 years. He's not a danger.
How about the stress of the trial? I mean, this went on for several weeks.
He's exhausted. He's exhausted. He's worn out. He looks pale. I can't, his blood pressure's been high, his blood pressure's been low, he hasn't eaten, he hasn't been drinking properly. I didn't weigh him, so I don't know.
Are you going to be staying down in North Carolina for follow-up treatment?
No, I may go down periodically if they allow me to see him. I think according to the judge's ruling, I will be allowed.
Do you know how he will be going to North Carolina?
I really can't say. I can't say. That's a personal thing. His family has to decide that.
They've not decided whether it's a private plane or...
They haven't decided yet, and they're going to let me know because I'm going down with them. Okay?
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
First of all, your reaction to the verdict and the fact that there were convictions and not proven. How do you feel about those?
Well, obviously, Mr. Gigante's loved ones, and we are very disappointed in the verdict by the jury. We feel, quite frankly, that this verdict just brings to its absurd conclusion the RICO statute, which allows a person to be convicted of very serious crimes where he's not only not heard talking on tape, but he's not even heard talking about the crimes. Convictions based upon hearsay, double hearsay, triple hearsay, where obviously we as attorneys aren't given the opportunity to confront those individuals who allegedly make statements about our client. We were obviously also additionally hampered by the fact that Mr. Gigante has been and remains mentally ill and incapable of assisting in his defense. That particular problem is exacerbated when you have a situation where an individual is convicted based upon statements made by others years ago, and we're not able to question Mr. Gigante and get his input as to those matters. The government produced a mountain of hearsay that I don't believe any one of us would ever want to have to confront in any serious matter that related to our own personal lives. You had 6 informants, one of whom we weren't even able to confront in court. And while the jury rejected some of their testimony, it unfortunately accepted some of the other testimony, which resulted in the verdict that we have. So it is disappointing, but I will tell you that we are not done. We will continue to fight what we believe to be a gross injustice, and you'll be hearing from us in the very near future on these issues.
What are some of the issues?
Continue to fight or appeal?
We're going to be raising the competency issue again. We think in connection with the sentencing, and we also think that in connection with the trial itself, several very important appellate issues exist that will give, we hope, the Second Circuit the opportunity to correct what we view to be a gross injustice.
Now, you had asked Mr. Gigante not be remanded. Why did you prefer to see him here for now?
Because Mr. Gigante's medical and psychiatric condition continues. He's in need of constant medical and psychiatric care, and we felt that the best place for him would be at home, where he has been for the past 7 years, so that he can be examined by his own physicians.
You did not bring any doctors or experts.
The burden of proof is always on the government. It's not on us, and we felt, and we still feel, that the government's proof was woefully deficient, and based as it was on what we felt and still feel was uncorroborated testimony of cooperating individuals who had everything to gain in this case.
Well, why do you think then, if the government's case was so lousy, why did the jury find out?
Because we think that there was a great deal of prejudice that we had to overcome. I explained to the jury that in both my opening and my closing statements, the issue of organized crime, of mafia, La Cosa Nostra, particularly in the context of a RICO indictment, which allows a very nebulous legal concept and allows for the hearsay evidence to be admitted based upon an alleged overarching conspiracy. What happened here, I believe, was that perhaps the jury wasn't able to put aside what they believed coming into the case, or any preconceived notions they may have had. That's the only way, because the evidence wasn't there. About organized crime in general, and Mr. Gigante in particular.
Mr. Gigante,
Mr. Gigante was very subdued, very quiet. I don't know that he understood what happened. He was surrounded by his family in a very emotional scene. He has a very loving, caring family. His children, his grandchildren, his nieces, his nephews, his great nieces, his great nephews were all there to give him the moral and emotional support that he has needed throughout these proceedings. It was a very emotional circumstance. The Gigante family is a very close one, and quite frankly, in my experience, I've never seen a closer, more loving, more caring family than the Gigante family. They are a family to be admired and to be emulated.
Mike, what happens now logistically as far as getting things down to
we're still working out the logistics of that. You were in court. You heard the court's order. We intend to fully comply with the court's order.
Where is he going with them? What company?
We're still working out the logistics.
Where is the members going? Will family members go?
We're still working out the logistics.
Aside from the competence issue, what, and all the rhetoric about the injustice of RICO, what appeals issues do you have to go to the Second Circuit with that will be a legal brief rather than television?
Well, perhaps I'll let Mr. Carter Gaynor handle that one. I think that there are substantial legal issues.
Name a few besides the competence.
Would you just
step up to the mic, sir?
And introduce yourself, sir.
I'm Stephen Carter Gaynor, and I've been handling a number of the legal issues in the case. It has been my view from the very outset of this case, as we've told the court from the beginning, that there is something that runs against the fundamental basic precepts of the American judicial system to have hearsay statements from other people who've never appeared before the court or the jury come into a trial and can serve as a basis for a conviction. Those
sort of assigned to look into it and get a tentative schedule for the rest of the trial, which I did last week, and that's why I called you. And then I hand it off to somebody else. And then I'm just sort of in an editorial presence now for deliberations. But so I don't know what they're doing. They'll either do it. I mean, they'll do it either tonight or they'll do it before it comes out. They can always do it during the deliberations. They'll probably do it before the trial since we So these witnesses, they're just I mean, not the witnesses, the jurors. Yeah. And then they're just taken out. They'll be taken out at the end, right? We'll never see them. That's it. Yeah.
I mean, we're not allowed to draw them, so the way I'm drawing them is a lot about focus.
Right.
I have to do a face to just color thing.
Right.
I make them nervous and focus.
Does he always wear, does our defendant always wear a jacket? He does, yeah. Maybe when he leaves his home. In the shots I see him, you know, just in like a windbreaker. Yeah, I guess when he comes to court. Oh, that's right. That's his brother. I knew his brother was a crazy. No, does he? What's the deal with his wife? I love it. Is the girlfriend here? Up, man. Is the girlfriend here? Neither one. Why? I want to see them.
He has
I'm surprised that he did. I couldn't see the wheelchair. In the very back of the courtroom. And I'm looking for him. And I didn't have my glasses on. And I didn't see the wheelchair. I saw him in a suit. And I saw him looking to the jury. And it just wasn't in focus. And I thought he was doing it. It just looked like he was. Everyone says he looks so dazed. And maybe he did. But, today he didn't to me.
Right at because and if he was dazed, he wouldn't have this instinct as soon as he walks through. Everyone has to
Also, just let me know, yeah.
You guys must have good knees. I couldn't be dropping.
That's what it sounds like.
I'm done. What's that? No.
Yeah, we're gonna keep down up front, all right?
Now, Zachary Carter's going to hold a press conference inside to the metal detector.
There's a speed limit, man. This is all going to be moving into the lobby.
How far away are they? How far away are they? Maybe 10 minutes.
I don't want to get caught while you're trying to take a shot. Turn on your
Okay, fire it up.
You guys are going to go in?
Okay. All right, that's the way
Right.
we just want to hold it.
Oh, wait a minute. Thank you very much. See what I can do.
I'm over here, buddy.
Thank you.
You got it. Take care of that.
Got it.
It ain't like it's on TV.
So what?